Welcome to the June 19th bhyve production user call. We have Andrew, Mark, Gibran, and myself, Michael, so far, and you can support this work at bsdfund.org. I realized I'm spending more time volunteering than I am working. That's scary. So BSDCan just wrapped up. It was great. There was a very cool talk by Hans-Jörg Hoxer, I probably pronounced that wrong, about OpenBSD SVM, and the title is a bit misleading on confidential computing, but he went through all of the nifty AMD CPU hooks for encrypted VM memory and key management, and do check out that talk. The full length day talk should be available on the playlist for BSDCan on YouTube, and the divided videos will be up soon. Let's see, the EuroBSDCon call for participation closes this week. I've dropped in 2 talk proposals plus a EuroBeehiveCon. I encourage you to do the same. And welcome, Beach Geek. I'll put you on the list here. Suddenly, I like that. I'm more inspired by that than any of the topics. Beach Geek, I'll give you the floor in a second if you'd like it. And the OpenZFS User and Developer Summit site is up. We have graphics and registration is open. So looking at the list, I know you were there last year, Andrew. I'd love to see you again. And everyone start talking to your bosses about being able to attend and possibly sponsoring the event. Any questions about those events? And so, Andrew, we touched on this, I believe, on the ZFS call, but you have stabilized Windows Server 2022 with NVMe storage by upgrading to the latest OmniOS.
What?
Any other details to share there?
What? Oh, okay.
Oh. Beach Geek, welcome. You've got family and friends. Is this your first time joining? No worries. Andrew.
Okay.
Just here to catch up. Don't have anything to say, is what he says. He's in
Oh, okay,
chat.
cool. Awesome. Oh, missed it. There it is. Hey, welcome. So, Andrew, anything else on your Server 22 adventures, or you think you're out of the woods on that?
That seems to sum it up.
Cool.
I have had the VM running for a few days now, so with no crashes. It also resolved an issue we were seeing where if you tried to reset, do a reset or restart from within the VM, like a software restart, it would leave the VM down rather than bringing it back up.
Oh, interesting.
So that got that fixed as well by using the more recent version. So current version of software good, gooder
And
than old version.
Yeah.
I don't recall, had you tested the SSD on the other host, or are we still pending the results on testing on SSD for performance?
I've done some performance tests. It it definitely performs better.
Okay.
Storage performance or overall performance?
Well, storage performance, but storage performance ends up helping everything.
It does.
Question on that. Does it still require the TPM 2.0 pass-through?
You're a little
I
muffled.
think, Gibran,
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
your voice is a bit screwy, but I think the question was, does it require TPM pass-through to run
We have,
the server?
I have not, so on Windows for our chiplets, we haven't ran Windows 11 on bhyve, well, at least not in production. However, in my testing, I had to set the register keys whenever I created the MDT image of it, so that it doesn't require the TPM device at all.
Oh, okay.
So I'm right now it's more we're using the hack in the system that they're trying to tell people not to use with the
Yeah.
Capisto. So it probably is, but I haven't heard of how to pass through TPM on bhyve on OmniOS.
Okay. Gotcha.
That has just arrived in 14.3 on FreeBSD for what it's worth, and hopefully you and yours will be pulling that in. It's
I mean, I don't know when that dropped into the code base, but I know our current release is like came within the last month.
Okay, and mind
So
you, there
it
is,
could be
go ahead.
there.
There's both pass-through and now emulation, to be more specific. Pass-through's been around for a few releases, as I recall. Note, TPM PT and now emulation. Okay, so Mark G, off the top of your head, based on your recent experiences, I would love to hear your wish list for a bhyve Windows guest agent. What were the tasks you wanted to achieve?
Not necessarily just Windows, but
Sure.
for any OS really for bhyve. But basically, networking is basically the main thing. I needed to be able to tell me like so. There's different ways that I'm handling this on bhyve right now. I am I have an image. I have a Packer image I built that has its first NIC is set to be DHCP. So I can have Vagrant spin it up via DHCP and either have the OmniOS server use its DHCP service over Ether stub to allow it to directly communicate to the VM. I consider that the like provisioning network. It's separate to everything else. It only allows the host to access the VM. That's one way of being able to get Vagrant to be able to auto configure stuff after the fact. The other way is that right now I'm using Serial on all the OSs, so on Windows SAC, on Debian and CentOS, adding Serial commands to the boot prompt. Um, Once I do that, I can then like I use a Ruby pseudo terminal to basically in Vagrant and Ruby to inject net plan configurations and apply them. One second.
Okay, using a Ruby.
Because Vagrant's written in Ruby.
Yeah. So the terminal to inject commands, was it?
Or over commands over serial because he logins over serial
Mm-hmm.
to them.
Okay.
And that allows me to set the networking. And once networking's set, I can then use Ansible or any other provisioning tool to set the networking the way that I want.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it would be a lot easier if you know how VirtualBox has its guest tools and QEMU has its guest tools. I think they have functions to be able to get the address or configure the address in such a way without having to do all of the serial commands. Like it has like I guess something sits on the current, as it boots, it sits on the. I don't know how the guest tools work, so I don't know how to even begin to know that. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does, and it's come up, and any amount of squeaky wheel action might help.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, for what it's worth, I just realized one could scrape the dmessage output and grab at least MAC addresses and various things from it to some degree, but that's certainly not something Windows
Well,
do over the SAC and
once you
EMA.
have a MAC address, you can use a an ARP lookup or an ARP.
Yep.
You can use ARP to probably get the IP.
Well, don't get me
I want
wrong,
to say.
aren't you manually giving each VM your MAC address of choice such that it's not a question of a surprise, perhaps?
So what I do is in the vagrant zones is I have it create a VNIC with a MAC address, and the user
Uh-huh.
can specify auto in the configs, and it'll generate a MAC address. So we're
Ah,
still manually technically setting it, but the vagrant zones plugin is handling that.
I see. Cool.
Um, so it creates the VNIC, and what the VNIC's created is what the underlying host VM uses whenever it spins up its network connection.
Cool.
So I mean, I have solutions. It's just that
Sure.
they feel hacky and I mean
Hey,
they
yeah.
work, but they do the job, and I haven't had them fail since I've written them. So I've only been adding, I think, random. The worst part is that since it's through Ruby terminal over zlogin through serial, that I only have new lines, and then also running through Windows SAC.
Hmm.
Like that whole chain is terrible because a lot of them introduce a lot of anti escape characters,
Yeah,
and you
yes.
have to, and it's like there's encoding on top of encoding, and it
Yeah.
is not fun.
Noted. Noted. Okay. going from networking and just getting that sort of bootstrap, do you think you're set from there, or is there more you want to do over a management, be it serial line or plugin in the future, be it monitoring, be it other good stuff?
I think monitoring would be nice to be able to return how much CPU usage is actually being used inside the VM versus if you wire it or not. Like it would be nice to have those things, but I haven't really thought past what the functional needs are.
Mm-hmm.
The nice to have would be something like monitoring, like, how much CPU attack. Oh, you would probably get it by looking at the process IDs on the host. But yeah, monitoring probably. I don't really know what else. I mean, are there any other things that you would want out of a tool if you're trying to set up a automated way to create VMs? Like what you would want a tool to do? I can't. I mean, functional is all I'm really in the mindset of.
I suppose putting on my storage hat, any and all true deep low-level storage quiescing would be nice. And I know, say, Windows itself does some acrobatics to quiesce absolutely everything for a backup, be it a SQL database on NTFS, and it does stuff, and some of that's pretty well documented, but I've never seen someone really spell it all out and structure it, and then have, of course, ZFS on the host and be it your
Well,
SQL server
the
database, do
thing
all the right things in harmony, in perfect harmony. Go ahead.
the thing on Windows that at least in theory could be done is there is a quiesce command in the um, VSS
Yes, all VSS
utilities.
related. Correct.
Oh,
Yeah, so
right, for the
you
true
could do the
access.
VSS quiesce snapshot and then release, and that would be a very quick set of operations.
Yes, that's
And that would be nice
precisely
because then
what
you
it
could,
looks like.
I
because in the
did
Windows
submit.
UI, you could just right click on a folder and choose the restore from folder and restore your file that way, right? Is what that
Well,
would
yeah. I
That's
mean,
a
result in.
different factor, but
it's a different
um,
factor, but
yeah.
we can. I know at least at least for like CIS shares, we can already deal with things like that.
Yep.
We I don't know if we can do that on the what is it, the P9 service or 9P, whatever.
Right. That's a,
Verto AO9P on
oh my
OmniOS.
gosh. That's a very strange thought. But yes, note and notice how this is also an open lib ZFS core question. So there's that. Um, any, although 9P is a pretty simple protocol and just snapshot your data set and you're probably halfway there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was mostly thinking of just it from the purpose of getting, getting access to those snapshots. If we have the 9P export there into Windows, will it show um, under previous versions of snapshots, like the same way that I see when I'm using the CIFS share
Uh,
on uh, for a
You
remote machine connecting to OmniOS?
unbearing the lead, are you currently using 9P shares to Windows?
I do not, so I do
Okay.
not have the answer to that question.
So, okay, but the valid questions, and you know, I Emil working on for IOFS client support happened to be at BSDCan and still has work to do, but let's flesh all those out. And yes, of course, we want nice things like the user-facing, previous versions to save yourself a phone call. So I hear you. I
I
hear
love not
you.
getting phone calls.
Yeah. Less calls from users so you can attend this call. See, I bet Beach Geek is sitting on with a user retrieving files from like a week ago, and that's why they can't talk right now. So anything else regarding guest tools, or is it, well, I'm hearing largely networking, some amount of be it monitoring. I want my storage quiescing. Uh, any other shots in the dark on that?
Maybe power control.
You said power control?
Yeah, tell the VM to shut down safely instead of telling his own to halt type situation.
Well, that's already reasonably covered, to be honest.
Okay.
Um, you send it because when you do, rather than halt, if you do a shutdown, it sends an ACPI shutdown command, just like if you had pushed the soft power button.
Hmm.
And every OS should handle that correctly. If it doesn't, I have words from Microsoft, which is not
Oh,
a particularly shocking thing.
with the caveat that that is on by default on server, but not the desktop operating systems, and it's not hard to find, but there very much is a control panel option to say, hey, behavior of the push button, and you have to enable it. And I can dig that up if really necessary. It's just kind of dumb. Anyway, so yeah, but yes, that most OSs should handle that correctly, and that's a nice nudge forward. Gibran, any thoughts on guest tools? What have you used in the past under thing of choice? And actually, I wonder what the with VMware having like 1,200 VM configuration options, I'd be curious what all their tools can and can't do. Anyhow, anything else on guest tool thoughts and brainstorming?
Nothing coming to mind.
Cool. So, Mark, you saw the Silva demo, and I see that I checked what they were working on. They were working on FreeBSD networking just like last week. Those were the most recent changes.
Hmm.
Uh, it is indeed impressive what they're doing, and I heard rumblings that BSD can of other efforts. So let's hope all these things come together beautifully as we get the plumbing under the hood
I
moved
mean,
forward.
I have a working demo of my proof of concept, my SmartWorks things. Like, I guess I could show it, but I don't want to make any promises. And it does kind of defeat the purpose of the port because it's completely written from my old project I had started 3 years ago. But it is, I think, interesting nonetheless. And if we need something to fill some space here, I'm more than happy to show
Oh,
it.
I think you better do that, sure. It's a sunny day here and week is wrapping up. So you'll do a demo?
Yeah, I'll
There
do a
it
quick
is. I
demo.
see it.
I know it's going to have issues,
Rock
but
and roll.
screen number one. Okay, see my screen?
Mm, Uh, I will in a sec. They now put them in tabs, which is very annoying. Let me see. I don't see it, but maybe someone else does. No?
No? Okay, let me
Let
try
me.
again.
Oh, others chime in. I could easily be. I see Zoom Workplace. Bring
Let
all
me
to front.
try.
Oh, I will stop my share. So no, probably you didn't share. So yeah, go ahead and try that. Oh, Mark screen. Yes, somehow it had both shares at once. Probably a new feature.
Ah,
Thank you. What you got?
okay. So it's it's mostly React stuff because I had learned that a while ago, and this is my original name was called bhyve, and I wanted a way to be able to control zones on OmniOS via GUI. I looked at
Alrighty.
first into virtual min. I brought this up in a meeting like probably 2 years ago whenever I'd
Sure.
stopped working on this. And virtual min had some support for zones, but no one was maintaining it. And I didn't really want to reuse the virtual min system. It was too much for what I needed. And I was like, I wanted to do something that will fit for what I'm doing here at my job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so more or less, basically, it's got a worker controller model in that you install a worker application on the OmniOS server. That's basically a node application that issues commands, gathers information, and does the various things. It doesn't do like any low level, uh, it doesn't do anything. It's not it. A lot of it has recently been AI driven, unfortunately, but it has helped sped me up in getting me my idea out so that I can
Mm-hmm.
refine it later. But yeah, so the worker is a Node.js server, and then the front end is a Vite React application on top of a Node.js server. The Node.js server on the front end, I called Zone Weaver. It is basically just a glorified proxy, and it makes every request that you see in the browser. This is the Vite app, makes requests through the um, the front end node server to the back end. So this means that I can have multiple hosts and switch between them, kind of like vCenter, basically.
Cool.
So it does take a couple seconds to load this the first time. I don't know why it's being slow. Something probably crashed because I crashed the demo. Let me see. Okay, it just loaded. But yeah, I have things like oh, why is that not working all of a sudden? And then this should refresh in a second, and I should have a console to the machine. I'll have a task log. I'm doing a terrible job explaining this because my cat's making noises in the background. Let me refresh this. Something is being slow, and I don't know if it's because I'm sharing, but this was working out like perfectly right before the meeting. So, and this is a sales to the backend machine, so I have, I can issue commands from the interface. Um, this will show all the tasks that I've done on the machine. Um, Networking, I got fancy with some React Grid stuff and live flow. So I'm collecting network statistics by monitoring some of the zone atom accounting commands. So I'm able to kind of see which VMs which are using the most speed. Um, so that was probably the funnest part of this was setting up that. Um, but I have a firewall with a bunch of VLANs in my network here at my home, so that's why I have so many. Networking bandwidth status, and then I had charts somewhere. Where are the charts?
Oh, pretty. Whoa, 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 back up.
You didn't see that.
Oh, yeah, I looked away for
Oh,
2 seconds, and there you go.
Yeah, that looks
Hello.
amazing.
yeah. So I'm still working on this. Like, there's so many ways to try to auto calculate this and actually do this, but I really wanted to see. I worked my last job. We had a bandwidth map on our
Mm.
heads up display, and it was using weather map and Libre MS and a few other tools. Something must have jiggered. But yeah, so I really wanted that, but I was like, we're in 2025, that was 15 years ago, and this looks better. So I used React Flow to kind of use the historical data to get this information. Um,
I trust
so
90% of your development went into that alone.
only about 6% of the overall
Okay.
thing. A lot of
Okay.
it was trying to figure out how to make a Node.js front-end server proxy WebSocket request for the BNC connection to the machines.
Cool.
So that was probably the thing. I'll show that real quick. So I don't have the ability to edit zones yet. I can only start, stop, VNC, basically monitoring type commands and very basic commands. It's coming soon as being able to edit the zones.
Okay.
Um, but this will
And
take a couple seconds to establish the WebSocket, and we should get a window in just a second.
purely zones or possibly Beehive or a
This
Beehive
is
in a
Beehive.
zone?
No, this is
Oh,
the
okay. You
Beehive
mentioned
zone
zones.
specific.
Okay, got it. Cool. Great.
Yeah, Beehive, using the zone tool to control Beehive. I'm not using any Beehive commands.
Okay.
Uh, and that means I can support KVM and LX zones and other things as well later on in the future.
Yeah.
So hopefully all zones. That's why it was renamed from WebHive because we Beehive to Zone Weaver because I thought it would be better that way. So this should load in just a second. It's slow because I still haven't completely figured out the proxy between the two, but I have a BNC console machine. And if I wanted to open up a Z login console, I should be able to open that up. And there's a Z login console. So that was over serial. So I use a lot of my knowledge of Vagrant zones to be able to get some of the Z-login stuff to work on this. Can't make new VMs just yet, but you can add new hosts. There is account management. So I'm trying to set it up to where there's organizations so like we can have multiple customers on a host and they can only see their specific servers and be able to access their emergency consoles and only control their VMs. What else is there on this? I think devices. I was trying to prepare it for PPT pass through and stuff, so I grabbed all this information, put it here. That was my this is what Sil was showing me. I was like, I really want to be able to do pass through for GPUs because
Sure.
AI is coming soon, and we're going to want a lot more people passing through GPUs, and
Yep.
we really want this to work on bhyve and OmniOS. So trying to facilitate this to make it a little bit easier. Um, and the storage. This does take 30 seconds to load. I'm sorry, it's so slow, but development is development.
You're forgiven.
Charts.
Oh, pretty pictures.
Yep. You can change the time flow. You can turn off all the totals, so it's a little bit easier to read versus write. Time frames and sets, the application configurations. Like there's some other settings I think that I forgot a tab that you can like set the timeout, how many time, like how often it does specific checks against certain things, and how often it runs cleanup jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. So Zone Weaver is the front end, WebHive is the back end. The interfaces that you can edit is usually always chosen by the navbar up here. Yeah. So any questions, anything you want to see that I might have? I probably don't have it, but I might have it.
Is it likely to see the light of day
I'm more than happy
on
to make it
your
public.
Git contraption of choice with a license of sanity?
I don't have any issue open sourcing and letting other people use
Awesome.
it. That's not the issue. It's just that I don't like releasing trash. So
Yo,
I
I hear
keep
you.
things close to my chest until I am sure that it's not smelly.
Yeah, so if what language or environment would be needed for someone to just say, "Oh yeah, this makes sense to me,"
Right
like
now,
React? Well,
OmniOS, and
okay.
Node 22 on the host. So
Node
if you have an
22.
OmniOS,
Got it.
you just have to have the Node 22 package, and I think maybe like uh, SmartMon tools. And let me go to the packages
Sure.
page 1 second. This might give me a better idea. Manage.
So if someone says, "Hey, I'm a PHP developer," you'll be like, not
I
here. It
used to
won't
do
help you."
PHP. I used to
Oh,
PHP.
no. Oh, pretty.
So yeah, so you can manage. So one thing I don't know how does FreeBSD have a boot environment management system?
So yeah, to some degree, the BE. It started with the Solaris BEADM, and then they created their own native BECTL, which
Yeah,
happens to use open libzfs core.
yeah, BECTL is quite nice and useful. I prefer it over some of the others.
Hmm. And it's in base,
Uh,
so
Yeah, it's in base, so you don't have to worry about installing dependencies and things like that.
exactly.
1 second,
Oh,
there's
pretty.
a section that I'm trying to
Hmm.
show you. Yeah, so SmartMon tools, TMUX. I don't think Effing's actually very used, but most
Zero.
zRipple,
Yep.
but most everything else is already included. But
Yep.
other things like provisioning for Vagrant, rsync for that's just not installed on the machine for some reason, and then Ansible. So some pretty basic apps that you don't necessarily need to do all the functionalities. So like if you don't want to have monitoring, don't install SmartMon tools. If you don't want Ansible, don't install the
Sure.
Ansible
Totally.
stuff, and it should just fail in the background and just not collect the data or not have I want it to where it'll just have the function grayed out or something. So it still has a lot of work to do. So it's still a mess. But
How are you talking to, say, Beehive and zones? What does that little nexus look like? Are you just spitting out
I
shell commands or relying on a
yeah,
library or something else entirely?
spitting out shell commands, basically prefixing everything a pfexec inside of it so the service can run as a user but still have power to be able to run root commands. Um, I am doing some validation before it does commands.
Okay, good.
But I don't really know the good library in Node.js to issue commands other than through shell to backend systems. So that would probably require, like, if I were to do something native, it'd be like writing it in Go or some other language that has that kind of support. So
Sure,
right now
sure,
it's
sure.
just running command line tools that I run every day.
Hmm. And I'm not saying there's a correct answer. And, when it comes to ZFS, there's the Python-based libZFS that's a handshake agreement is how it's been described on stability. And it's like, well, we're not where we want to be yet.
Right.
Cool. Great. Many questions for Mark.
Um, I guess the only question would be, have you got a public repository for this?
Yeah, that
Cool.
was back. I want to make it public. I just haven't cleaned it up enough to say that, hey, you should use this. So it's like it's running in my development machine because I pulled all the levers and belt and all the push all the right buttons to get it to work. So I need to clean it up a bit, put it into. I have a task list what I need to do before I feel I want to make it public.
Okay.
So it's this list right here. The list was a lot longer, but
I don't see it, but
it's because I'm sharing an individual screen. But
yeah, no,
basically, it's go ahead.
yeah. Well, what kind of help are you looking for? And go ahead, go through the list.
I don't think that I necessarily need help. I understand all these commands. I just need to write the React code in the front end I've already made the back end expose almost all the functions. Let me see if it'll show.
Oh, there's something.
I'm gonna share the
Sure.
API page. So I made sure that I had AI go through and document all of the API endpoints for the back end so that if you didn't want to run the front end and you wanted to have like your own
Oh,
custom
okay.
service interact with it, you're
Okay.
able to issue every single thing that the front end can issue. Um, so I do have I'm working on documentation, but basically there's a lot to do in a project. So it's not that I want to get to a state where other people can say, okay, I do want to actually work on this and this isn't garbage. So
Mm-hmm.
and since it had a 3-year hiatus and I had only started picking this up for like the past 3 weeks now, I don't want to I want to give it a little bit more time to cool from all my recent changes.
Sure.
But soon I will redemo this in the near future as time permits. So it is definitely a side project right now at Advice.
Okay. So I don't know if you've been following the calls, but
Here and
um,
there, I
I
missed a few.
did drop in my what I'm calling a requirements doc, and I wrote it in a slightly nervous panic that I heard there's a new project. Well, so what turned out to be Sylve coming along, and so I thought, okay, please, Sylve, do not repeat the sins of your forefathers and ancestors. So I dropped it in chat there, my requirements doc that's also linked from the main minutes doc. And take a peek. Maybe you've checked all the check boxes or you have some even ones to add to it.
I most
But
certainly probably have not, but I will definitely go through it.
but the idea there was like a VM is not like a mail server you start at boot and shut down at host shutdown time. It's a very different beast. And Jan's been great about explaining the whole process supervision issues that took quite a while for us to collectively get into our heads. And even your points about, networking and guest tools and setup and MAC address control and all sorts of things. I hope there's something of interest to you. There's the administrative communication, which sounds a bit like the whole Vagrant talking, or Ruby shell goodies talking to each other and discussing. Um, do, 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 do.
It's
Yeah, set up
interesting.
your networking in advance. You have all of Crossbow to bring to the table. Some systems have said we do this type of networking. You can't bring in your own existing networking. Have a nice day because that's what the author loves, and too bad.
Mm, that is
Um,
a sin that I am guilty of right now. I do like Hospital a lot. I
oh,
should
Crossbow's
probably.
awesome. So there's that. No, I'm not. Yeah, yeah. Let's not even. Yeah. Oh, and for what it's worth, on Tuesday we had a great discussion of overlay networks and uh, SDN on the jails call. It just sort of switched into an SDN call, and check that out.
I hadn't read that one yet. I'll go
I
watch that
don't
one.
know the state of like VXLAN and others on illumos. You probably have nice things, but people want, WireGuard everywhere or zero tier everywhere or VMs and jails that can just show up on a network and find their way home and all sorts of things. So I trust Crossbow does quite a bit of that quite
I
well.
believe there is support for like VXLAN, but I haven't done much with it. So I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
I don't know. I can't really talk about it.
No
So these
worries.
stubs right here, I'm familiar with host names, VNets, IP addresses, link address bridges, and Ether stubs. But I did add support in the backend for the VLAN. So I gave it the Omnio. I gave AI this page and say, hey, I need these endpoints made. Please
Oh,
copy
cool.
this
Yeah.
exactly,
Yep.
and it did exactly what I wanted, the way that I would have done it. So I didn't have any problems with
Great.
it. But I know My point is OmniOS for a fact has the ability to create VLANs and the overlays, and those are in the back end. I just haven't
Hmm.
exposed them in the front end.
Cool. Including VPN tunnel type
I think
WAN,
there were some ton
WAN over
and
the
tap
WAN.
stuff, but
Okay,
I'm
cool.
not sure about WireGuard. I think there is a WireGuard package from OmniOS, but I hadn't looked into it, so I don't know how that would play into this. And I've never used WireGuard.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, consensus seems to be none are quite perfect yet, but at least we have some free options that, well, we'll see where that call ends up.
Right.
Gee, the web goodies, like, oh, what if, oh, you're getting to the list, no worries. Like, we have a web interface. What if is it secure? What a concept. Is it something you dare share over the WAN, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that. We are at 44 minutes in, started a wee bit late. Any other topics, ideas, questions, fun jokes, interesting things you've learned, stories from recent conferences? BSD came.
I have an
Yes,
interesting
please.
question. ZFS in a VM on ZFS on a host.
I've
Yep.
done it.
I
It's not
can't
great.
figure out what happens there.
In regarding to caching, perhaps I'll do a quick search here for
Yeah.
primary cache. So here we go. This
I've seen
was comments
performance
on
get
Zevol.
bad.
Right.
Performance gets bad. Writes
One,
get really slow. Um, Reads get very slow.
okay, one punchline is that you want to only cache metadata on the VM and or host, but do not double cache and do not try to have an ARC competing on both of them. So that's on page 8 of this document. I just searched down for it. So there's one key point, and of course, don't let your ARC blow out your VM memory because that's just burning a candle at two ends. And I hope those freight trains, to mix my metaphors, do not collide in the middle. What have you
And
describe your poor performance, or Andrew, go ahead and tease that out.
well, I was going to say I would probably do the metadata caching on the VM and the full arc on the host
Okay.
because at that point, if there's anything where you have multiple VMs that have access to the same blocks, say for instance, you've got clones that you haven't uh, rewritten or whatnot, those will get cached once despite being used by multiple um, VMs.
Correct. And
Okay.
hypothetically, deduplication that would, in theory,
Deduplication is
benefit
another
everything,
example.
but on a good day, downhill in the wind or something. Should intelligently recognize.
Theoretically,
the-
it should give you advantages, and at worst, you're going to break even.
Right. Oh, we had Faisal on the call and they dropped, no worries. Okay. When you say this poor performance, like right out of the gate or over time or what?
Over time. So
Uh,
I
Smells like arc, which grows over time, and I trust you know where to see the arc performance and be it top
yes.
or otherwise, or maybe just to grab the sys control and just watch it grow. Have a nice day and hope for the best.
Yeah, so I set up a HP Gen 9 server with
Hmm.
all SSD storage, and I was playing around, so I set up 8 VMs on there,
Okay.
purely for testing purposes.
Sure.
And um yeah, just the performance was getting bad.
Hmm.
I was hitting I went from getting full gigabit Ethernet speeds to getting 30 meg, 20 meg, 10 meg. It was getting
Hmm.
bad. Yeah, with
Purely
read and write.
networking or
It was just the read speed off the disk.
read speed? Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
read speed off the disk. Deleted the VM, started again, was back up to speed. So something on the ZFS was not right. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure it out.
Hmm.
But I'll take these suggestions into account.
Yeah, and do watch,
All right.
fortunately FreeBSD top has ARC information right there on like perhaps other OSs that do not have integration
Yeah,
with ZFS. Go
yeah.
ahead, Andrew.
I was gonna say if you can try the caching suggestions and see if that helps. Arc usually takes a good long time to get warmed up, and so if you've got two trying to get warmed up and conflicting, I could see that taking a bit to show up.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so the storage was a Nextcloud instance with lots and lots of small files. And I normally set it up with oh, where's this? I set up my storage for Nextcloud with specific with this is my just gonna copy this and paste it in the chat.
Sure.
Where am I? Yeah. So that's the so it sets record size 16K. So I'm wondering maybe if the block size is if there's a mismatch between the host block size and the block size in the data set in the VM, something like that.
Potentially, but that might look like write amplification, and I've seen like NTFS explode in size when virtualized because of a mismatch. But performance over time, my gut instinct is not so much, but I'm happy to be wrong. Uh,
Okay.
could you just do a top dash B for batch and just see what your ARC settings are on, say, the host and one or two VMs? Because
Okay, so
it's the bottom row
so
just before the swap information. Dash B.
you want the arc?
Uh, so, for example, I'll give you an example. I'll just log into a machine, give you one. SSH. Top, quit. So here is sample output from a system I'm running. Yeah, so note the ARC one. So you've got ARC. Is that a VM or the host? That's not a giant ARC for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's a VM. That's
Okay,
a
yeah, so your
it's
ARC
a
is what,
new
a
it's a
G?
recently created VM. Yeah.
Got it. And what about on the host? What does that ARC think? So I think I've punched mine down to 8 gig just to not set things on fire. Um, and cute, there's compressed ratio and other information. So yeah, this maybe grab that equivalent info off your. I'll have you find with that.
What is it? Not?
Are you able to grab that?
I don't. It's not printing out for some
Okay.
reason. I don't know.
No worries,
But
no worries. Hmm. anyhow, watch for that. And if you see, and of course, just total memory available on the host. If you're out of RAM, you're out of RAM, and that will at best slow things down. At worst, just start causing the kernel to stop VMs and random processes. There's a Reaper that does things. Anyhow, other topics, questions, ideas, fun stories, you name it. It's your call, not mine. Well, if not, go ahead.
So this will be useful for me as well because I've done this and I'm guilty of a few VMs that are doing this and then they're slow. And this will probably answer why that was the case. So this helped me too.
Great. And yeah, it's simply ARC versus VM memory, which might be slowly growing versus this inside the VM. Well, you're burning that candle in several spots, and good luck.
And if you're doing it in the VM, when you do your zpool create, you can apply the primary cache metadata to the entire pool.
Which will be inherited, I trust it.
Huh?
Which will be inherited, I trust.
Yes, that should be inherited by default. Most things should be. I am hard pressed to think of the things that aren't inherited.
Sure. Well then, Andrew, would you like the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.